facility in Nasik, and that's now up and running and doing a fair bit of work. And we continue to believe that it's a matter of time before the consciousness in India sort of increases. The reason why I suspect the uptake of vaccines in the public market has not been as strong as some of the developing world is because there is no reimbursement. You see, now it's fairly well established that, I mean, everybody knows here that the cheapest form of healthcare and prevention is vaccines. And in a context where the governments are paying for healthcare, that message comes through blindingly clearly. Now, since in India that's not the case, the sense of urgency has not been as much. But it's a complex problem like everything else in India. It's not that there is a lack of awareness about this. If you talk to Ministry of Health officials, they're all completely convinced about the importance of bringing vaccines in. I mean, India has also signed up to the Millennium Development Goals. And, but at the same time, and it's unfortunate that our infant mortality numbers are what they are. Now, if you compare that with, say, even Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, their infant mortality rate numbers are much better than us. And there's only one reason for that. That's because they have a very well-developed public immunization program. Now, again, in India, it's a complex issue because it's a state and a central subject, health. So the challenge is that even if you were to bring in vaccines into the public immunization program, how do you ensure compliance? And privately, people will tell you that if this is done well, then I don't think there is a lack of willingness to bring in more vaccines under the mass immunization program. Of course, in any developing country, there will always be multiple demands for funding. So that challenge will always be there, and we have to live with it. The third issue, I suspect, is, again, I think it's more India-specific issue, is what's the model? When you're dealing with high-tech products like vaccines, clearly you can't expect companies to put big investments unless they are aware that there is going to be an opportunity which is somewhat certain. And particular vaccines plant, everybody here would know, will take 5 to 6 years, and by the time the plant comes on stream, if you're not backstopped, then it becomes a challenge. The models which have worked extremely well, Brazil, I think Wang, you spoke about Brazil. Brazil has an extremely well developed, it's probably it's a benchmark program. They have a wonderful public-private partnership. We have a couple of partnerships with them. And in fact, it's a win-win because it's a technology transfer arrangement. So I think it's important, it's fairly well understood that if we claim to be, getting to become a superpower, then clearly healthcare has to be dealt with, and vaccines and immunization are a very important part of that. Even more so that you have vaccines today which are completely appropriate to India. So, for example, the rotaviral diarrhea vaccine, the leading cause of infant mortality here, 50,000 deaths a year, is rotaviral diarrhea, and you have vaccines available. Cervical cancer, leading cause of women's mortality in this country, and you have vaccines in the market. Notwithstanding the controversy, the reality is that those vaccines are now marketed in 120 countries in the world, and they are available in the public immunization program of most of the developed world. So I think the challenge is multifold. I think there is an element of funding, but there are also issues about finding the right mechanism to make sure that these vaccines come to the country. And as far as GSK is concerned, as I said, we are convinced about this opportunity. The last 5 years, we've launched 4 new vaccines here. We have a malaria vaccine, which is in phase 3 now in Africa, which will again be very appropriate for a country like India. And you spoke about therapeutic vaccines, and we were in phase 3 with a couple of therapeutic vaccines. Again, those will have an opportunity in India, but we need to find the right mechanism and the right models to make sure that these vaccines are available here.
Just to add what Hasid said, we spend roughly around about 600 crores out of the 27,000 crores budget of the government on vaccines, with just about 2%. Now, if you want to introduce all these new vaccines, it's going to cost. And as we're moving forward, the Gavi has a threshold limit on the per capita income level for the countries. And we're going to cross that threshold limit also. Now, if we're going to cross that threshold limit, that source of funding from Gavi goes off. Then what happens? How are we going to have this type of funding done so that vaccines are available? Now, if you're going to set what Brazil model is, tech transfers, or you're going to set some industry here, then there has to be some commitment coming from the government saying this much of volumes we guarantee you for this many years. Now, if those types of guarantees do come in and says, okay, this is what we will give, because India is a huge volume, 100 million dosages are being used today. So if you have that type of volume, government has to commit itself and says, okay, we will take this much of capacity of yours and rest you can do it in private. Now that type of commitment politically needs to be made. And I'm not sure whether government is ready for that commitment when you're spending only 600 crores. And this vaccines will involve a lot of money. So that's something that we need to debate. How is that going to happen?
I think what Hazrat said and what you said, I think two or three things come to the surface very, very clearly. One, of course, in our kind of a setup, we need to have a private, public and an NGO kind of a partnership. That's going to drive. We need to have some kind of an assurance from the government which says that, yes, you do that and obviously you are going to get something out of it. So at least the long-term plans can be really planned. So I think that's very, very critical. And I think the third, which in my opinion is very, very important, is the technology transfer. Because in our country, especially the kind of infrastructure that we have, possibly we may have to even look at a thermostable kind of a vaccine. Because pulse polio has been a success, great. In fact, we have been able to actually see no cases of polio this year. But the fact remains is that for all the diseases and the kind of disease burden that we have in our country, do we have plans where you can also look at some innovative technology transfers and some innovative technology which could be a long-term drawn process which will ensure that the manufacturers also get their worth. So I think that's something that we really need to address during this session.
Dr. Eli, I was going to come to you. I mean, if three of the big five actually speak about funding issues and some kind of a guarantee, I am sure the problem will be more complex for a company like Bharat Biotech. Your thoughts on that?
I mean, funding is always the problem. I think even multinational face the problem too. Funding. I think it's everywhere because even an investor puts money, the product is going to come 7 years down, 8 years down, and still not sure about the revenue model. Everybody will be concerned. Okay, and I think the problem we are going to face. That's why if the funding is a major problem today, why few vaccine companies only in the world? Very few vaccine companies in the world. I mean, we are here probably about maybe 15, 20. I mean, China I have not considered, but 12 maybe globally. Okay, but so that itself clearly tells why number of companies are low, because of the funding situation. Because there's not much funding is available, and most of these companies are driven by private entrepreneurs, unlike China, which is a lot of government support is there. But most of these other countries, Europe, India, I mean Sri Lanka, all those countries are Brazil, everything is private-driven entrepreneurship. So naturally, funding is a bottleneck. The problem, in the emerging countries, there's no depth of funds. There are a lot of filthy rich people are there in the emerging countries. The problem with them is there's no angel investors. Like in US, we have a lot of angel investors. Somebody believes philosophically something he likes to control malaria. Okay, he'll say, I'll fund some program of your company. I'll fund you for next 3-4 years. Let's see what happens. That type of angel investor is not there. The problem in India is if somebody made a lot of money, including our politicians in India. Okay, they make a lot of money. So when they make money, they don't invest back to the society. They rather want to they want to buy this hotel. They want to believe in real estate, but not on knowledge, not in the public health. I think that's a major problem. We need more angel investors who have become a filthy rich. They should really contribute back to society through some way. They don't have to give it to the temple or something like that, but instead of giving temple, they can even contribute through a company to some technology that can reach public health, solving some lives of the people in the villages. Itself is a big charity, actually. That sort of concept mind has to come in the people's investors' mind. And even venture capitals, still they're not charity minded. So they're also like, they want to put money and then ask the return in next probably 24 months. So they're also very impatient. And I think they also need some charity minded in their mind. And to think that, yes, we are funding this company, we'll expect a minimum return, but let us wait for a little longer and have a little bit more patience to help the community point of view. Even the VC fund also should realize that type of conceptual thinking change dramatically. They have to think in a different direction. And I think, all of us, whether multinational, domestic companies, all of us are working